Let's take a look at working with a jagged array and then printing with for each loops. So int brackets are, make the new array, so new int, pair of brackets, another pair of brackets, add a set of curly braces, and then declare a couple arrays in here. So new integer array, brackets, initializer, say 1, 2, 3, comma, punch down the line, and then another array in here. So new int brackets, another initializer list like 4, 5, and terminate with a semicolon on the outside here, that is. And what we are going to do is just print the entries of each subarray, but we will do it with a for each loop instead of a for loop. So you can type for each, and for now we'll type var cin, and I need a symbolic way to represent the first array right here. Now remember that the first array is stored at index 0 with respect to the array R. So what I have to type is R of 0 this way. This says basically go and access each entry stored in the array at index 0, the index 0 being the first index of array R. And then we can just C will represent the 1, the 2, and the 3. So print as follows. Console.writeLine, C plus, and then terminate with a semicolon this way. So let's run this. Start with the debugging, Control F5. Give it a second to load, and as you can see, it does work because it prints 1, 2, 3. It just does it in a column instead of a horizontal line, but that's trivial. Let's close this panel. Okay, let's do it also for the other dimension then. You really should pause the video and do a mental outline of how to do it for the other array. But it's for each var cin, let's say R of 1 now. So what this means is R of 1 is just a reference to the second array, because that second array is at index 1 with respect to the array R. And then you're going to say console.writeLine, and then after that we can say C, and let's again add a blank space maybe, like this, terminate with a semicolon, and let's use right over here this way. And notice something also, that I have two different for each loops, and they both use the variable C for iteration, and that's okay. Because you see, this for each has its own scope, and then this for each has its own scope. That's why you can use the same variable. What I mean is the variable C in both of them, and there is no clash in terms of, for example, the second for each telling you that the variable C already exists because it's first used in this upper for each. And then start with that debugging, Control F5. All right, so that works because now we get 4, 5 on the screen. I just have to press any key to continue to its own line. That's the usual call to console.writeLine on the bottom. So console.writeLine, terminate with a semicolon, run that, start with that debugging. Okay, so 4, 5, press any key to continue. It's working very nicely. Terminate this. If you wanted to, you could do a combination of a for each, for example, and a for loop as follows. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and then comment it out. So up here, just click, for example, on comment out the selected lines, Control K, Control C, this way. And then if you wanted to, you could take this, right click on the highlighted area, go over to outlining, and then hide the selection, Control M, Control H. You'll see it hides it for you. It's a comment. If you put your mouse over the ellipses, it gives you a preview there of what's inside the ellipses. So let's try it this way now. We're going to have for int I is equal to 0. So the reason for the 0 is that this first array is at index 0 inside R. And then you can say I is less than R.length. So that's so because this has two entries, 1 and 2. So two entries. So that means this is at index 0, this is at index 1. The length is 2. So that means you need less than the length, not equal to the length. And then you can say I++. So this will just iterate you through each array. And then you can combine with a for each as follows. You can say for each var cin R of I, like this. That's allowed because at first I will be 0. So that will be a reference to this array. And then I will be at 2. That will be a reference to the second array. So for each var cin R of I, you can take the action, say, of doing console.write, and then just display C. And because I'm using write, I'm just going to put a blank space here and then terminate with a semicolon this way. And then console.writeLine. Well, let's see what happens in this case with this code. So start with that debugging. So that gives you everything 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the issue is, of course, we want to output on separate lines once we switch from the first to the second array. So you can do that as follows. Just add a set of curly braces, and let's define a scope. So take basically all of this here, Control X, and then Control V back into the curly braces. Let's see what the difference is, if any, this time. So run that. Start with the debugging, Control F5. So now it prints 1, 2, 3 on one line as the entries from the first array, and then 4, 5 as the entries from the second array, each on its own line. Terminate, terminate. So this is the second bit of code. In other words, you can combine for loops with for each loops very nicely. I'll see you in another video. Please leave a like.